It's time for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football.
Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Nearly 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 17th year of fantasy competition, Brian Eichenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state, celebrating 23 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Brian Eichenberry and Andy Hall.
There are thousands of places you can go for fantasy advice, but you're here because we earn your trust. Many of the so-called experts are where they are because they look good on TV or because they have friends in high places, not because they have the right answers, when that, my friends, is all that matters, the right answers. This is 515 Fantasy Football. Andy Hall joined as always by Brian Eichenberry. And Brian, I understand we gave our listeners a whole lot of right answers in Week 6.
We pretty much had the record-breaking grading system of our season so far, and I am pleased to announce a plus 54 grading system for week number 6. Plus 54, my friend.
That is, that's not too many incorrect answers, let's put it that way.
No, it wasn't.
No matter how you found us, iTunes, Stitcher, the Libsyn website, or on 1350 ESPN Radio in Des Moines, we thank you for entrusting us again as we prepare for victory in Week 7. We've got all the matchups and grades on the fantasy relevant players. We've got the pop quiz, the bargain bin, and we begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. The craziest story perhaps of the week, Fred Jackson, involved in an auto accident following practice on Tuesday. Initially, the story from TMZ was that he and teammate Marshawn Lynch were drag racing, and Fred Jackson ended up in a stop sign. Turns out there was no drag race, but Fred was taking it a little too fast out of the parking lot. He's uninjured, but it was certainly a crazy story that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Speaking of Marshawn Lynch, full participant in practice Wednesday. He's good to go for this week's game. Thursday Night Football, Seahawks, Niners. Speaking of the Niners, Carlos Hyde held out of practice much of this week. He is expected to play Thursday, but certainly something to keep your eye on just in case. Anquan Boldin, no sure bet to play either. Eddie Lacy's snaps were limited on Sunday, according to head coach Mike McCarthy, because, quote, he is beat up. Not on the injury report, so what gives? One theory out there suggests that because he's been hurt, his conditioning has taken a hit, and thus he's out of shape. Starks is healthy, he's in great condition, and that's leading to more work. Any take on this from you, Brian?
No, this is just some kind of that risk that is always there by owning anyone on this roster. You never know when they're going to go, how they're going to go, who's going to play what and where and why. That's why this team is awesome and always will be awesome, because they are great at making sure everybody knows their roles and jobs and everybody is prepared. Just ask all the Randall Cobb owners.
No doubt about that. Moving on to some headlines from Buffalo. Tyrod Taylor took first-team snaps in practice on Wednesday. He's a probable start this coming Sunday in London. Sammy Watkins did not practice Wednesday. He's likely to sit out this week. Percy Harvin, another odd story from this week, did not practice, travel with the team. This is what Rex Ryan is calling a personal issue. What do you suppose that could entail, Brian? Any guesses?
It's just Percy being Percy. You know,
right.
just when you think the guy's turning it around and really has it together, it's straight down the tubes again.
By all reports, he's kind of a locker room cancer, or at least has been his previous couple of stops, Minnesota and Seattle. Moving on here, Marcus Mariota might be lost for multiple games. He has a grade 2 MCL sprain. There have been suggestions that he could play through it. I doubt he will, however. So if Marcus Mariota was your plan of attack, best to look elsewhere. Austin Safarian-Jenkins did not practice Wednesday. He's looking doubtful for Sunday's game. He's been out for quite a few weeks. They do look to get him back within the next week or two. Landry Jones, set to start at quarterback for the Steelers if Big Ben's knee isn't ready. Ben, a limited participant in Wednesday's practice, says he can play through pain, but I guess if I were to give my opinion on this, Brian, my 2 cents says they'll probably sit him another week. They probably saw enough from Landry Jones last weekend to feel comfortable enough to throw him into the lineup against a Kansas City defense that my grandma could throw on. Emmanuel Sanders suffered an AC joint sprain in Sunday's win. He escaped a much more serious injury, fortunately. The Broncos are on a bye week, so Emmanuel will heal up and hopefully be ready for Week 8 action. Joique Bell should get most of the early down work versus Minnesota this week. Zach Zenner is out. Abdullah seeing less snaps, of course, due to ball security issues. Should be Joique Bell with a heaping helping, that's easy for me to say, of Theo Riddick. Adrian Peterson was limited in practice on Wednesday with an injured finger. I don't anticipate him missing Sunday's game, but if he misses any time whatsoever, Matt Asiata will, of course, be the hot pickup. Christine Michael was handed the majority of first-team snaps in practice this week for the Cowboys. He's expected to start that game. Dez Bryant did not practice Wednesday. He's unlikely to play Sunday night. And one last item here, Tavon Austin did not practice Wednesday for the Rams. No details on this, Brian, but it's not a good sign Austin couldn't practice coming off a bye week. His status will be a concern if he doesn't return to practice on Thursday. Into the matchups we dive, and I believe you got the honors of Thursday Night Football this week, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I do. Rock and roll, hoochie coo, let's go. If you were going to start Russell Wilson, now is the week to do so. Seattle at San Francisco. It's a little away game trip down the coast to the Niners' 32nd ranked pass defense. Russell Wilson, he's going to get a B-plus start here today. Expecting him to toss a few touchdowns and a pick with 250-plus yards. So you'll have a good day out of Russell Wilson, especially with these bye weeks coming up here. Marshawn Lynch, he gets off to a good start here tonight. He's fully healthy. He's going to be doing great. He's got some work to do to increase his yards per carry average, but he's a B-plus must start as Seattle will be up early and running all over the place. Wide receivers Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse, they continue their 1-1A status here in Seattle. Nearly identical stats for the duo, which they should have their own touchdown this week. I'm thinking it's going to be some good airtime. It's going to be a lot of work. Seattle is really going to have some good offensive fantasy football numbers here. So Baldwin and Kearse are both going to get the B. Jimmy Graham, he's entered the building. He has 2 weeks now where he's scored some points and is leading the leading receivers on the Seahawks now with 344 yards and 2 touchdowns. I am monitoring this based off of targets per week. Has Seattle figured this out finally? Have they figured out how to get a big guy the ball? I hope so. But one more week before we give him a good grade, so he's going to get a B- just off of the season as a whole. Maybe they were just trying to experiment a little bit, but who knows? It could be an anomaly. Cap has been very fortunate in the last 2 weeks, but I think he's going to come crashing down. C+ for Colin Kaepernick. He's only going against the number 4 overall defense in the Seahawks, so he is going to be forced to make some quick decisions with little time to hesitate, expecting a game plan to force him to throw and make those turnovers. Wide receivers Anquan Bolden and Torrey Smith, they should have average days at best. They're going to try and make it pass happy with that secondary from the Seahawks hawking those balls. It's just they're the champs for a reason, and Bolden B-, Torrey Smith B-. Not my favorite matchup, so pay attention to the bargain bin because you're not probably going to want to have either of those 49ers wide receivers in your starting lineup. Carlos Hyde, B-. This, you heard it in the headlines. Also, given the matchup, the Seahawks are not looking to give up a lot of rushing yards this week, and they're going to try and have to pass it. That's just the way this game flow is going to dictate. So not a good day to start any 49ers. Tight end Vernon Davis, he's still questionable for Sunday. I'm not excited anymore. You got to look towards the future here. Garrett Selleck. Seattle has given up the second most fantasy football points to opposing tight ends. Oh, by the way, trade rumors are starting to swirl, sending Vernon Davis out of San Francisco.
To London town we go, and Sunday's matchup between Buffalo and Jacksonville. Start on the Bills side of the ball, and E.J. Manuel. He is benched this week because it looks like Tyrod Taylor will be under center as the starting quarterback. So take E.J. Manuel out. In fact, he's probably an outright drop at this point. Tyrod, though, faces Jacksonville, who ranks 22nd in the league against the pass. They've given up 10 touchdowns to just 1 INT on the season. And despite not having Sammy Watkins or Percy Harvin at his disposal, I think Taylor can get it done through the air while chipping in some rushing yardage as well. We've seen him do it. Let's give him a B in this game. The running back is LaShawn McCoy. He gets an A, facing a Jags defense that surrenders over 100 yards per game on the ground. McCoy nicked the Bengals for nearly 100 combo yards and a score in Week 6. I see no reason why he shouldn't be able to at least match that output this week. That's it for the running backs. The receivers, Chris Hogan is a C+, a Cecil Shorts type of receiver with lots of speed out of the slot. Hogan should come close to matching Shorts' Week 6 stat line of 4 catches for 63 yards with a minimal chance of catching a TD. I see him as more of a possession guy in this passing attack. Robert Woods is a C. Despite facing a Jacksonville secondary that was beat up by Houston's receivers last week, I see Woods as no more than a desperation flex play, considering the majority of his 2015 campaign has been a big disappointment. Still, I do think he's more likely to reach the end zone than any of the Bills' wide receivers, and that includes Denarius Moore, the former Raider, who I'm leaving on the bench for now. Charles Clay is your tight end. I'll give him an A. Like last week, when the Bills are missing key components in their passing game, Clay is heavily targeted by whomever happens to be tossing the rock. Team high 13 targets, 9 of which were hauled in for 62 yards total in Week 6. That sort of volume should be expected again this Sunday. On the Jags side, Blake Bortles is a B+. We've seen it time and time again. The Bills, despite being a stout run defense, are not very good against the pass. Bortles has been very serviceable and would be downright stud material if it weren't for his turnovers. I see him putting up another 40 to 50 passes in this matchup, which could yield a solid fantasy day. I'm leaving all Jags running backs on the bench, even if Yeldon returns this week. Buffalo is very good against the run. I don't anticipate Jacksonville being the team to buck that trend. As far as the receivers, Allen Hurns a B+. The Bengals wide receivers were largely held in check by the Buffalo secondary in Week 6. The only exception was Marvin Jones, Cincinnati's number 2 wide receiver, who finished with 95 yards and a score. Hurns is more Jones-like than any of the other Jags receivers as the second or third option on most passing routes. I like him this week. Allen Robinson, a B. The Bills clearly game planned to stop A.J. Green in Week 6, and it worked, though they did end up yielding over 100 yards rushing to Bengals backs. A-Rob is always a target monster, so he'll get his, but will he score? That is the big question here. Julius Thomas looked great in his return last week. I give him a B+. Thomas was targeted a team-high 13 times upon his return to the starting lineup in Week 6. He'll continue to be a high-volume opportunity play week to week in the pass-happy Jags offense.
All right, Buccaneers at the Redskins. Jameis Winston, he's looking to win game number 3. He is 1 for 1 in the touchdown-interception ratio right now. Not great, and neither is his opposing pass defense. Number 8 in the league right now. Winston's going to get a C-. Him and V-Jax, they do have some chemistry, so that's a good thing. Vincent Jackson, he's going to get a B+ here for that relationship. He stands to benefit the most from it. He likes to fight. He's good at catching the balls. But, sorry, Mike Evans owners, it's not good for you. Evans has 33 targets compared to V-Jax's 39 targets. Yes, he was out for a game. It is a level playing field, though. Mike Evans is only catching 30% of the balls in his direction. That's the troubling statistic there, is he is only catching 30% of his targets. So B- for Mike Evans. You can't complain if you're not catching them. Doug Martin, he's going to have a great game this week against a Washington poor run defense. A start for Dougie here. He's going to get back on track to his old young self, I guess, technically. Tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He is questionable. Would love to snag him back up off of that waiver wire if he's still out there, but he's questionable. He's going to wait another week. But if you can go out there and snag him a week ahead of time, you have the roster space, now is the week to do so. Washington, they keep getting worse and finding creative ways to lose games. I feel there is a 100% house cleaning coming for this team and at the end of the year. So until that happens, people get grades. Kirk Cousins, D for don't. He completes passes here, but there's no meat to go with the potatoes. It's just a bad situation. 6 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So no on Kirk Cousins. Running backs here, you got Alfie Morris and Chris Thompson. Matt Jones has that foot injury, so don't have to worry about him anymore. Alf, he's getting a C+. Chris Thompson, I'm going to give him a little bit more. He's going to get a B out of me, and I'll tell you why in the bargain bin. Hint, hint. However, you're going to need to be careful here. Tampa Bay is 26 in the run defense, so Alfie could sneak out more of that playing time, but listen for the breakdown later. Wide receiver Pierre Garçon, B-. Deshaun Jackson, he's still nursing that hammy, and he had that setback last week in practice, so likely look toward Week 9 return for him. No tight end to mention here without Reed. The Skins get 2 good players back after the bye, but I don't think it's going to help out too much.
Yeah, monitor that situation closely. Jordan Reed looking like he might actually be back in the lineup this week, believe it or not. So
Yikes.
If indeed that is the case, I would definitely plug him in. Otherwise, Derek Carrier is not a terrible option if no other good options exist. Atlanta, Tennessee is the next matchup. The Falcons, Matt Ryan is a B. Tennessee is one of the stingiest pass defenses in the league, one of only 2 teams to allow less than 1,000 yards passing through 5 games. I won't go so far as to say Matt will be a mediocre in this matchup, but I don't think he'll be much better than average either. Devontae Freeman is your starting running back. He gets an A. The Titans give up nearly 130 yards per game on the ground. Opposing runners have scored 6 touchdowns on them through their first 5 games. Freeman should keep rolling here. I'm keeping Tevin Coleman on the bench. Receivers, Julio Jones, a B-. The Titans have given up 9 wide receiver touchdowns this season, but only give up an average of just over 200 yards per game to the position. The only number 1 wide receiver that has come through with a big game against them this season, can you guess? Probably not. It's Cleveland's Travis Benjamin back in Week 2. The odds are not in favor of Jones exceeding expectations this week. Leonard Hankerson is a C+, Ryan's 3rd best option behind Jones and Freeman. Hankerson doesn't fit the profile of the type of wide receiver that has been reaching the end zone versus the Titans this season. Therefore, he's a flex play at best this week. Roddy White, a C. Scored a touchdown in their Week 6 matchup at New Orleans, but was only targeted 4 times on the night. He likely won't see much more than that going forward. Your tight end is Jacob Tamme. I give him a B+. Tight ends have torched the Titans in several games this year, including Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Deion Sims, and Jordan Cameron, all of whom have hit pay dirt versus these Titans. Tamme should get more looks this week than he did in Week 6. On to the Titans side, Zach Mettenberger is your starting quarterback most likely. I keep him on the bench. Atlanta has typically been very good against opposing quarterbacks on the season. Even though they don't have much of a pass rush to speak of, they've given up the 3rd most passing yards in the league through 6 games. But Mettenberger, if he starts stepping into a role he's somewhat familiar with, he'll need to shake off the rust before anyone should trust him anywhere near their fantasy starting lineup. For the running backs, Antonio Andrews, I gave a C+ to in this game. Atlanta has given up the 3rd fewest rushing yards in the league thus far, and are also tied with the Lions for most touchdowns given up to opposing runners at 10. So they're not giving up a ton of yards, but they are giving up a ton of touchdowns. Unless Andrews gets an opportunity or 2 up close, I don't anticipate him reaching the end zone here. The other running backs I'm leaving on the bench, Bishop Sankey, Dexter McCluster, etc. The receiver, the only one really worth mentioning here, I guess, would be Kendall Wright. The emergence of rookie Dorial Green-Beckham and contributions from Justin Hunter and Harry Douglas, among others, have cheapened Wright's stock this season. He was wide open in the end zone in last week's game, but unfortunately Marcus Mariota did not see him. The C+ grade is because he's a threat to score. I just don't expect it. Delaney Walker is probably the best bet of all the pass catchers. He gets an A in this one. Team high in targets, receptions, and yardage in Week 6. Walker should once again this week be the focal point in the Titans' passing game.
Saints Colts, and Breeze is looking to be coming back around for one last hurrah here. He's been slowing and aging, but after finding Snead and Ben Watson, he's been showing some zip, moving those chains. Breeze is going to get a B+ here. Indy has the 28th ranked pass defense, and he seems to have found some weapons. He seemed to have found some groove and some swagger, even though his stats didn't quite portray that in the fantasy realm. I think things are starting to come around here, so watch out. Wide receiver Cooks, he's going to get a B-. Willie Snead shows some great flashes here, and he is the leading receiver in New Orleans with 15% of the targets and averaging 16.8 yards per catch. That's pretty awesome. If he's out there, grab him up fast on your waiver wire, B+ for Snead. It's kind of shocking if we go back to week 1, we look at Colston, Coleman, and we're not even talking about these guys anymore. The Saints has just been kind of flip-flopped. Once they start out to that bad start, I think they had some people to flush out of their starting lineup that were doing some tricks. Tight end Ben Watson, he had his career day last week. He was super excited for it. Look for him to have some carryover momentum there, B-. It's not going to be the same game, but Breeze seemed to be far more aggressive to him last week than he had been all year. Andrew Luck is back and healthy, slinging the ball. He will likely cut the Saints' 24 passing defense pretty bad here. A start for the DirecTV version of Andrew Luck, not the cable version that was in the first few weeks. You can pretty much forget his first 3 games from here on out. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, likely the number 1 benefactor, A for T.Y. Nearly a quarter of the targets and 7 catches for over 20 yards. Good grief. Moncrief, he's going to get a B to go along with Andre Johnson, C+. I'm going to start talking about him. I think they're figuring things out with him back in the lineup there again. So I feel like Luck is going to be spreading that wealth, getting his people some targets. Gore's going to get a B, as I expect him to get his touches, but it's going to be tough here. We kind of called this a couple of weeks ago. It's been creeping up. Bradshaw's back in town, and his workload's likely going to increase. I'm looking maybe at a 70-30 share here with Gore getting the 70, obviously. But that's changing. It's starting to move in that direction. So if you can move Gore on the trade, fire away. See if you can push him off to some sucker in your league.
Already did.
Yeah, good news. Good news. The Saints, they have the 31st run defense, so expect Bradshaw to get some good time here. I think they're going to really try and bring him up to full speed and let him have at it. Tight end Dwayne Allen, C- here. The tight ends in the Colts offense are very dependent on touchdowns. If you really look at the stats from the last 6 weeks, you got a good chunk of data here to look at. Their points are really touchdown heavy, and it's always iffy to start these kind of tight ends where they're always touchdown dependent. So be careful and start at your own risk.
One more matchup from me, Brian, and we move on to the pop quiz, which I'm very excited about this week, and you should be too.
Woohoo!
The Vikings, the Lions. We start with the Vikes and Teddy Bridgewater, who I give a B to this week. The Lions have given up nearly 1,600 yards through the air through their first 6 games and 10 touchdowns. Teddy might not be lighting up the box score with mammoth numbers, but he is worth a look in matchups such as this, particularly when defenses focus much of their effort on slowing Adrian Peterson. He should top the 153-yard, 1-touchdown stat line from the Vikings' Week 2 victory over Detroit. He gets a big bonus if he can run another one in for a touchdown. Speaking of running, Adrian Peterson, nobody better. He gets an A. 192 combo yards in the team's first meeting of the season, but failed to reach the end zone, surprisingly. Have a strong feeling this could be a multiple touchdown game for AP against the league's 28th ranked rush defense that has surrendered 10 rushing scores this season. On to the receivers and Stephon Diggs. I made this call a few weeks ago. B+ for him in this one. I'm on board with the Diggs hype train. Following 2 strong performances in a row, one versus the Broncos, one of the best in the league versus the pass. The Lions may be torched in this one if the talented rookie is given opportunity, which I think he will. Detroit gives up on average over 25 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position in standard scoring leagues. Mike Wallace is a C in this game. He wasn't targeted much earlier in the season when these two teams met. He's definitely below Diggs in the progression reads by Bridgewater more often than not. As far as tight end goes, Kyle Rudolph, I'll give a B too. He reemerged last week as a reliable fantasy option at tight end and did score a touchdown the last time these two teams met. He's a solid streamer option if he's available. On to the Lions, Matthew Stafford a B+. He threw 53 passes in his Week 2 matchup at Minnesota. He only completed 32 of them for 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an INT. That's the biggest fantasy day any quarterback has had thus far versus the Vikings, who are typically very good defensively. Theo Riddick is a B-, won't contribute much in the running game against a tough Vikings front seven, but has been a consistent running back and as consistent in terms of his involvement in the passing game as anybody in the league. He's a strong flex play, particularly in PPR leagues. Joik Bell, I'm leaving on the bench. The Vikings have only given up 3 scores on the ground this year, none to any of the Lions in their Week 2 head-to-head. Bell is banged up, but so is Zenner. Abdullah simply cannot be trusted right now with his ball security issues. All of them on the bench. The receivers, Calvin Johnson, he gets an A. You can't bench him, despite Minnesota typically playing him very tough. He saw 17 targets in Week 2 against these Vikings, catching 10 of those passes for 83 yards and a score. Golden Tate, a B, has been sort of a forgotten man the past couple of weeks, but let's not forget, this guy caught nearly 100 balls in 2014, and if the Vikings focus much of their attention on Megatron, it could mean easier route running for Tate, who should find some open space. Lance Moore, going to throw a C at him. Big Week 6, how will he follow it up? Typically, wide receiver 3s are relatively non-existent versus Minnesota, aside from perhaps Albert Wilson's long touchdown catch and run in Week 6. Lance Moore, an intriguing flex play this week if you're desperate. Tight end, likely will be Eric Ebron, mixing in with some Tim Wright. Going to leave them both on the bench this week. And Brian, it is time for the pop quiz.
Ruh-roh.
Still to come, the second half of our Week 7 breakdowns, plus the bargain bin segment where Brian and I attempt to go bold and give you a quarterback, a running back, and a receiver, many of whom are available right now on your waiver wire that you can plug in and expect a decent amount of productivity from. All of that still to come, but right now it is that pop quiz. Brian, we've reached the midway point of most fantasy regular seasons. What I want to do is take a look at the current top 10s at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver / tight end in standard scoring leagues. And you tell me which of the 10 at each position will finish the fantasy regular season in the top 10. Sound good?
I was not aware that essay questions were in my contract.
Well, we got to condense it down as much as we can. We only have an hour here, remember?
All right.
All right, so your top 10 currently are at quarterback are Andy Dalton, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, Carson Palmer, Blake Bortles, Eli Manning, Tyrod Taylor, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan.
All right. So if I'm looking at this, I think 8 of the 10 will finish in the top 10. Dalton, Brady, Rodgers, Rivers, Palmer, Eli, Cam Newton, and Matt Ryan. The 2 that I'm going to say aren't going to finish is Blake Bortles and Tyrod Taylor. I think those were kind of anomalies, not because of their own ability, but because of other people. The 2 and I'm going to even go 3, kind of bumping Cam out if I have to. Roethlisberger, he's going to be in the top 10. It's not his fault, but just wait. He'll get back to throwing 400 yards per game. He'll be back in the top 10. Brian Hoyer, he is throwing up crazy numbers after that whole in-out fiasco in the first 4 weeks. There is no doubt about it. He is a starting quarterback there. And with a stud like DeAndre Hopkins, it doesn't matter. He has proven he is matchup proof, and he will continue to throw it there. Because look at it this way. Is Brian Hoyer better than Tyrod Taylor? Yes. Is he better than Cam Newton? Yes. So he will be there. And
wow,
my wild card here is Matt Stafford.
Yep.
Take a look back, look at everything that's happened the last year, 2, 3 years back. He will be back there. Last week, if you notice, I watched the Lions game pretty close. Joe Lombardi went from the sidelines to being up in the booth last week. Mm-hmm. They kind of unhooked the chain there on Matt Stafford and let him start just chucking that thing. Huge results, vast difference from last week's Matt Stafford, who was in my starting lineup for that reason. Thank you. Back to week 1, 2, 3, and 4 Matt Stafford. Huge difference. So Bortles, Taylor, and Cam out. Hoyer, Stafford, Roethlisberger in.
Initially, you had this one right, in my opinion. I have Blake Bortles and Tyrod Taylor out of the top 10, and I welcome in, for many of the same reasons you just mentioned, Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson.
Ooh, tricky.
One thing they're missing this season is Russell Wilson running the ball. He's gone conservative, which is unfortunately what has happened to other quarterbacks like Colin Kaepernick, for example. These guys used to be total studs and very productive at their position. They've seen a regression because they're playing safe. Well, guess what? The Seahawks can't afford to play it safe anymore. They're turning into a terrible team right before our eyes. So you had it right in the 8 out of 10, but my replacements in the 8 out of 10 would be Stafford and Wilson. So there you have it. Your top 10 running backs, Brian, are Devontae Freeman, Matt Forte, Jamal Charles, Chris Ivory, Mark Ingram, Doug Martin, Le'Veon Bell, Adrian Peterson, Giovanni Bernard, Carlos Hyde.
All right. Well, I'm going to kind of apply the same methodology that I use for my quarterbacks. And I am going to rule 2 out here because I only think, the way running backs work, there's only so many true running backs. I am taking out Mark Ingram and Carlos Hyde. To me, for obvious reasons. I think the Saints are going back to the passing game. If you look at the last 2 weeks, the way they've been progressing and Drew Brees getting very angry and agitated, taking the game into his own hands, just like Matt Stafford. You've seen how that works. That's who they are. So for that reason, Ingram's going to fall. I think he's never been in the top. He's number 5? He's never been in the top 5. I don't even think he's ever been in the top 10. He'll settle down. Carlos Hyde, that's just going to go out because Justin Forsett, he will be back in the top 10. Those first few weeks with the Ravens, couldn't figure out what to do with him. They got it right. Look at his numbers over the last week, 4, 5, and 6. He's done great things. So he will be back in there. It's not going to take much to overpass Hyde. Here's my possible one. Since I had to take out 2, I had to throw in another one.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Gurley.
Interesting.
I think he's got the potential to break that top 10, not because he's going to be that good, but because others are going to be worse than he is. And over the next, 6, 7 weeks in fantasy time, he'll have that time to make up and then pass someone like Carlos Hyde.
So you think Jamal Charles is going to remain in the top 10?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm sorry. So, yeah, I skipped right over Jamal Charles. Obviously, he's out. That's obvious. So,
but you'd have to replace him then.
But I would have to replace him. So, let me throw you a little curveball here because I got another possible here. Danny Woodhead.
Oh, wow, really?
Dude, that guy's catching tons of passes.
Yeah, but in standard scoring leagues, you really think so?
Hey, touchdowns are touchdowns.
That's true.
And that guy gets them. Goal line. And the way things are working out, if you look at the touchdowns, the carries, and even those little swing routes out there, Woodhead's doing some action, man.
The 4 running backs I chose to replace out of the top 10 are Jamal Charles, Doug Martin, Giovanni Bernard, Carlos Hyde. Who I'm replacing them with? Justin Forsett, whom you mentioned. DeMarco Murray, because I think they finally figured out how to use him. Frank Gore in the top 10.
Yuck.
And here's the last one. LeGarrette Blount.
Oof. Well, we are going to have to make notations on this. And
yes, I got it written down. These are all wildly speculative, but it's fun to look at the first half versus what could happen in the second half of a fantasy football season. Let's quickly roll through the wide receivers and tight ends before we move on to the rest of our matchups and then the bargain bin. Wide receiver, tight end, top 10. DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald, Travis Benjamin, James Jones, Allen Robinson, A.J. Green, Keenan Allen, Odell Beckham, Rob Gronkowski.
All right, well, for me, this one was kind of easy. I'm taking Benjamin and James Jones out. If you look at everybody else, Hopkins, Julio, Fitz, Robinson, Keenan Allen, they've all got it together. Gronk's always going to be there. Those guys got it figured out. Except Green, I guess. Obviously, we can pull him out too. In that scenario, I will put in the old man in place of Green, so we'll move him in. And Calvin Johnson. I mean, you just talked about it. He's going to pull up there. So that's obviously going to happen. This is kind of one of those things where it's not that someone's actually doing bad. It's just that someone's going to sneak back into the top 10. And obviously, Antonio Brown, Once Roethlisberger comes back, he's going to skyrocket back up there. These last 3 weeks weren't because he played bad. It was because the quarterback played bad. Once Roethlisberger's back in, he's going to bump some people down. So you can look at I think A.J. Green's going to drop out just because there's so many things in there. Beckham out, Benjamin out, James Jones out, Calvin Johnson in, Antonio Brown in. Yeah.
Okay. Of the 10, I'm taking out Travis Benjamin, which I think is easy. I'm taking out James Jones. I think that's easy as well. And Allen Robinson's my other one that I'm going to take out.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't think that Blake Bortles can sustain the sort of production he's put up through the first 6 weeks of the season. So we shall see if that is indeed the case or not. But 3 guys to replace Calvin Johnson, I completely agree with. I think Julian Edelman deserves a spot in the top 10. And I think Brandon Marshall. Nobody's talking about Brandon Marshall, but you know what? He's doing some great things in New York, as he's been known to do every stop along the way. Denver, Chicago, anywhere the guy's been, he's produced. Miami.
Wild card on Barnridge making that list, huh?
There you go. Yeah, how do you like that? Somebody used a first-round pick on Gronk, and right up his tailpipe, there's Gary Barnidge. Unreal. All right, back into the matchups. We got to breeze through these, Brian. What's your next one?
All right, let's do it. Steelers Chefs here. Vic's magically injured and going to miss this week. No big surprise there. Landry Jones. He came in, showed what he can do, so I'm going to give him a B start. He showed a lot of poise, a lot of zip on that ball, and in control of the offense. I think he's just going to chuck it down to Antonio Brown in a pinch there and just get him the ball like he said to do. There were some hurt feelings there last game, but they're going to get it figured out. Landry Jones, B. Antonio Brown, he's going to get a B. I can't quite get him to an A yet, obviously, but hey, you know what? He's going to get it done. Let's not forget that the Chiefs are the 25th against the pass here, so that's going to help out a lot for Landry Jones. For that reason, Martavis Bryant, he's going to get a B. DHB and Wheaton, they're kind of irrelevant at this point. With Martavis Bryant coming back and showing he can do those things. Running back Le'Veon Bell, he proves that he is the go-to in trouble situations. So A for Le'Veon here. Tight end Heath Miller, he's still not getting the attention he deserves. Very frustrating for that tight end spot if you are forced to have that tight end spot. So he's going to get a C+. I expect this to be a wide receiver show, not a tight end show. One wrinkle into this whole game plan is Big Ben. If for some reason they say, yep, you're going, everybody is going to jump up a whole letter grade. So I would assume they're going to make that call on Friday. The Chiefs, they are terrible, and it's not looking better. Hopefully Macklin hurries back from that concussion, but from what I've seen, he is not passing that protocol. So you can't go all in on that. Alex Smith, he's always a C. I don't even know why he would be in your starting lineup, even if you had to. There's so many other options out there. But you got to give him grade, so he's going to get a C. Don't be surprised. Matt Stafford's guaranteed money is out this year if you see Matt Stafford in a trade for the Chiefs and he is in red next year. Macklin, he's going to get a B if he gets passes that concussion protocol here Thursday and Friday. But don't count on it. Charkandrick West, B-. He had those touches, but he did fumble. It was a little shaky going down there towards the red zone. He broke a lot of hearts last week for people who threw him in, myself included. He just had those opportunities, failed to capitalize on them. I expect him to get some more opportunities again, but it's the Steelers, and they've got a pretty decent linebackers there, so he's probably going to get hit in the face pretty hard. Now, Davis, he's still an afterthought right now. If West has another bad performance, you can expect to see him to pick it up. Tight end Travis Kelce in the tight end spot, and he's going to get an A. He should get some good action. I wouldn't, if you have that flex spot, you can start him as a wide receiver. I wouldn't do it. A in the tight end spot only. Depending on how speedy absent Macklin is on that.
How about this for ugly? Cleveland at St. Louis. Let's begin with the Browns. Josh McCown, I'm going to leave on the bench. Despite his hot streak and better than expected week 6 stat line versus the Broncos, I wouldn't mess with the Rams defense. They're every bit as stingy as Denver, ranking 3rd against opposing quarterbacks from a fantasy scoring perspective. The running backs, Duke Johnson, a C. The Rams are middle of the road against the run, but I'm not sure any of the current Browns running backs will be able to separate themselves from the pack as a standout. even when the matchup is decent. Johnson will continue getting a few carries and a few catches out of the backfield. Really nothing to see here. Isaiah Crowell, a C-. He and Turbin will likely split early down work, but with the Rams only allowing about 4 yards per carry on average, both Crowell and Turbin averaging less than that, this isn't a matchup I'd look to try to exploit. Turbin, I mentioned, he's on the bench. The receivers, Travis Benjamin, a B-. There's some production to be had here, I think, and Benjamin has the quicks to find open space and grab some account passes. Andrew Hawkins, I'll give him a C+, another speedy guy in the Browns passing game. Hawkins will need to step up his game quite a bit if the Browns want a chance to win this game. Tight end Gary Barnidge, he's our boy. He's an A. You simply cannot bench Gary. He's currently Fantasy's number 2 tight end in standard leagues behind Mr. Rob Gronkowski. On to the Rams side. Nick Foles, a B. On paper, this is a great matchup. However, I believe the Rams will attack Cleveland on the ground more than they do the air. The Browns are dead last versus the run. For that reason, Todd Gurley is an A. The rookie is quickly becoming a fantasy stud, coming off his best performance of the season in Week 5 and some much-needed rest on a bye last week. Gurley should see a ton of touches in this game and end up with great fantasy numbers. The receivers, Stedman and Bailey is a C+. Aside from tight end Jared Cook, Bailey's been the guy most frequently targeted in the Rams passing game. He's a pedestrian talent at best, but if he continues to get the volume, he may surprise in matchups such as this one. Brian Quick is a C. Supposedly he's healthy, but we haven't seen anything from him as of yet to warrant any serious fantasy consideration. Tavon Austin, a question mark this week, but if he plays, I'll give him a B-. And just when it seems like the Rams coaching staff has figured out a way to properly utilize his unique skill set, he disappears from the play calling, magically. It's really a great matchup to take a shot with Austin in a flex position, as the Browns have been dreadful against speedy slot guys like him. Jared Cook is a C+. This may be one of those rare weeks you'd consider plugging him in with guys like Bennett and Eifert on the bye.
All right, Texans at the Dolphins. Hoyer's going to take his 4th best passing offense into South Beach against an emotional Dolphins team. I expect Hoyer to tee off against the Fins. He has a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, and his number 2 wide receiver is going to be back. So it's an A start for Hoyer. DeAndre Hopkins, he is unstoppable, number 1 receiver in football right now. Obvious A for him. You don't have to listen to us to tell you to start him. Nate Washington, barring setback, is ready to be inserted as the automatic number 2. I would expect him to complement Hopkins very well. He's going to have a B-. Cecil Shorts, he is likely out. Running back Arian Foster, he's got his own B+. He's been running pretty good. He's been receiving better than average, so I would expect him to take a very significant step forward in fantasy football points. He did good last week. He's going to do even better this week against the 31st ranked run defense in Miami. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he threw a decent game last week, except he did throw 2 picks. Let's give him a pass since the reorg of the coaching staff. They look to be motivated and playing for something they believe in now. I'm giving Tannehill an average B here. They still lack the big-time plays from those wide receivers, and the Texans are an above-average pass defense. Speaking of those wide receivers, Rishard Matthews, B. Can he still see? Jarvis Landry, B+. He gets that plus on there because of his punts and his ability to run the football, as showcased last week by his 20-yard rushing TD. With that run last week, that is only 1 of 3 runs on the Dolphins over 20 yards. Yikes.
Terrible tackling.
Terrible. The running game showed a little bit of life last week against the Titans, so we cannot declare Lamar Miller as your savior quite yet. B at best. Let's give him 1 more week before you slot him in there. With the bye weeks, you probably have already got him started, though. I do expect this to be a shootout with the top-end passing offense in town. There's not going to be a lot of time to run. Tight end Jordan Cameron, he's going to get a P+. If someone's going to get a passing touchdown here, you can pretty much bet it will be him. With the way things are working out in a rejuvenated team, I think he is the biggest red zone threat outside of Lamar Miller, so look for him on Sunday, Andy.
The Jets and the Patriots, live from Foxborough. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be a B+ in this game. The Patriots are giving up nearly 250 yards per game through the air and face a Jets offense that is as healthy as it's been all year and coming off a dismantling of a Washington team that's actually better at defending the pass than New England is. Chris Ivory is a B in this game. New England, they've given up yardage to opposing running backs, but only 3 touchdowns on the season. Ivory is having the best year of his career thus far, but can only help the Jets so much as he's not a great pass-catching option, and they will need to pass in order to keep pace with the Pats on Sunday, so a tempered B. The receivers, Brandon Marshall, an A. Should have no problem torching the Pats, as he's done to nearly every opponent he's faced this season. He's a target monster. He's always a threat to score. What's not to love? Eric Decker is a B+. I love Decker in this matchup against New England's 27th ranked defense against opposing wide receivers. As we know of head coach Bill Belichick, defensively speaking, he likes to try and scheme against an opponent's biggest threat. Marshall is that guy over Decker. Decker gets more opportunities either way. It's a great play. No tight ends to speak of, so we move on to the Pats. Tom Brady, a B+. The Jets are ranked second against opposing quarterbacks, giving up an average of less than 11 fantasy points per game to the position in standard scoring leagues. But aside from Andrew Luck in Week 2, their competition has been relatively subpar. Brady is a guy you can't bet against, even in a matchup that looks tough on paper, but he's not an A grade because the Jets have 8 INTs on the season, and Julian Edelman, he's not 100%. Banged up his finger a little bit last week. Running game. Dion Lewis, a B. Facing the best run-stuffing unit in the NFL, I don't believe Lewis will get many carries in this one, but he could contribute heavily in the short passing game, as Shane Vereen did last season in the game at Foxborough. LeGarrette Blount, a C-. The only success he may have all day is a scenario where the Pats are so far up that they're feeding him the ball in garbage time. Otherwise, aside from the potential of a goal line situation, I don't like his matchup at all this week. The receivers, Julian Edelman is a B. He started Sunday night's game on fire, but fizzled quickly after hurting his finger and then playing in the shadow of Colts shutdown corner Vontae Davis. He will be lined up opposite either Darrelle Revis or Antonio Cromartie, both of whom are capable of slowing anyone in the league, thus the tempered grade. Danny Amendola is a C. He hasn't really done anything explosive this year. He'll need to find it in order to get open against a tough Jets D. Rob Gronkowski is an obvious A. Doesn't matter what an opponent tries to do. It's near impossible to stop Gronk completely. Where Brady went to Edelman early and often last week, I believe Gronk will be that target this week against the Jets, who are a very stout pass defense.
All right, Raiders going to travel down the coast to sunny San Diego, home of the Chargers, and also Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. Miss you. Derek Carr, he's coming off the bye week, does not come into a very favorable matchup. The Bolts are 7th against the pass, and Carr's biggest wide receiver threat is a rookie, so be wary. B- for Derek Carr. It's a big game, big matchup, but it's going to be tough for him to win on the road. Wide receiver Amari Cooper, B. While I love his 13 yards per catch and 6 catches over 20 yards, he's also going to draw a halo-type coverage. Corner under, safety on top. That's bad news for him. Not sure how he's going to handle it. Good news for Crabtree, though. Interesting fact, he has 1 less catch than Cooper does and 70 less yards. Expect him to get some good plays this week, so B-. Running back to Latavius Murray. Let's give him an A start on the Raiders here. 4.2 yards per carry. He's going to match up well against San Diego's terrible run defense and his ability to break the big one out there. So watch out for him. Phillip Rivers, he looks to keep those fantasy owners happy with his week. Raiders are bad against the pass, and Rivers is doing extremely well with the pass this year. A start for Phillip Rivers, looking to build and contribute to his number 1 passer rating here. He's probably going to have over 300 and at least two touchdowns, probably all to wide receiver Keenan Allen. He's also going to get the A this week, so 2 huge grades there coming out of San Diego. The duo will have a great bond and going to keep connecting. He's got 27% of the targets and 8 catches for more than 20 yards. Wide receiver Malcolm Floyd, he catches a few, then calls it quits. C start only if you have to. Running back Danny Woodhead is the team's number 2 wide receiver, statistic-wise. Give him an A here this week. I expect him to have better yards from scrimmage than his counterpart, Melvin Gordon, who's going to get the B-. Here's why. 4 fumbles. Yikes. So if he keeps that up, look for his role to diminish or even a good benching to teach him a lesson, and that can kill you if that's in the first quarter. So make sure to monitor those types of situations with Melvin Gordon. The Chargers are way too good to put up with an easy fix like turnovers. Tight end Antonio Gates showing Father Time who's the boss regardless of that extra bump from modern chemistry. He has had 2 games where he has 198 yards and 2 touchdowns, immediate return, and instantly takes the Chargers to the next level. A for Antonio Gates.
Dallas at the New York Giants. We start on the Cowboys side with Matt Castle, a B-. If he can avoid turning the ball over, the opportunity to have a solid game is there for the taking for Castle, who has proven to be a good, not great fantasy option when the matchup is right. The Giants have given up the second most passing yards in the league thus far and 9 touchdowns through the air. There's reason to like him. Christine Michael will be your starting running back. He gets a B. I would stick my neck out and give Michael an A grade if I was certain he would get the vast majority of the touches in this 3-headed backfield. But I'm not. The Giants are pretty bad versus the run, having just been gashed by DeMarco Murray last Monday night for over 100 yards and a score. Gut tells me the Cowboys coaching staff want to look like geniuses, so Michael, the best bet to score a touchdown of the 3 running back options. There's my bold prediction. Joseph Randall is C+. He'll split early down work with Michael. He'll have a flex-worthy fantasy day, nothing special. Darren McFadden, a C, likely relegated to the pass-catching specialist role. McFadden may get a few touches out of the backfield, but I don't expect him to do much with the opportunities aside from some yardage. The receivers, Terrence Williams, a B-. The Giants haven't been terrible against the pass this season, but they are missing Prince Amukamara, which should free up Williams on some downfield routes if Castle's given enough time to let it develop. That was a big problem last week for Dallas. Cole Beasley, a C-. Speedy slot guys typically don't light up the box score versus the Giants. It tends to be the big outside guys that flourish week to week, so a tempered grade on Beasley. And Jason Witten, a B+. He got healthier over the week 6 bye. He should see heavy usage with Castle getting comfortable under center and wanting to complete some short passes early to get the flow rolling. As far as the Giants go, Eli Manning, he's an A. There's a certain revenge factor in play for Eli this week, coming off a terrible Monday night performance at Philadelphia, getting blanked in Dallas earlier this season against these Cowboys who yield over 21 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks in standard scoring leagues. Rashad Jennings, I'll give him a B. The Cowboys' run defense has been trending down since week 2. Actually, in their case, it's more like falling off a cliff. They're 29th against opposing running backs, giving up an average of over 25 fantasy points to the running back position every week. There's reason to really like Jennings this week after a stinker of a week 6. Shane Vereen is a B. The Cowboys have been killed by pass-catching backs all season long, giving up at least 50 yards receiving and or a touchdown in every single game. The Giants would do well to target Vereen heavily in this one. Odell Beckham, an obvious A. If Riley Cooper, Anquan Bolden, and Jordan Matthews can do it, so can OBJ. Ruben Randall, a C+. He's one of Eli's favorite targets in the red zone, but he'll always be the guy that doesn't get enough volume necessary to be a stud. Big yardage and a score kind of thing. He won't get both. Larry Donnell is C. Dallas is top 10 against opposing tight ends. Donnell's stock, he's of course down following a turnover-riddled Monday night performance.
Eagles, Panthers, Sam Bradford. Well, don't know what you want me to tell you here. This guy makes terrible decisions, terrible throws, but somehow he still gets statistics in some way, shape, or form. Some good stats, some bad stats. C+ for Bradford. You got to wonder if it's going to be the Giants' defense that allows him to do that or who's going to make it happen. But the only bad thing with Bradford is expect him to have some turnovers, and those are going to make your points drop. So C+. Wide receiver Jordan Matthews, B-. He's been underperforming for weeks now, and the only reason he has been performing is because he's been breaking those tackles in garbage time. With an inaccurate QB, it's tough to put yourself in these positions to make plays. Just ask Antonio Brown a la Michael Vick. So Jordan Matthews on that B-. It's tough. Sam Bradford, he was skipping those balls in front of him. It just makes you sick to watch that happen and watch your a good wide receiver kind of go down the tubes there. No other wide receiver to note here on the Eagles. You never know who's going to get it, who's not going to get it. It just there's just too many bad situations here to even mess with. Even with the bye weeks, don't even bother. Just get out of here. Running back of note, DeMarco Murray. You heard it. Andy call it there. He's going to get back into the top 10. He keeps playing like his old self here. Last week, 22 carries, 100 and a touchdown. Good numbers for those owners who have been patient and had him starting again. B plus for Murray here. Even though the Panthers have the 12th best run defense, they still nearly give up 100 yards per game. So that's good news for Murray, who also catches a few balls. Matthews and Sproles, they both get C pluses here. I suppose if you have to start one because of a bye, I would go Matthews over Sproles only if you have to. Tight end Zach Ertz, B minus. He's a matchup problem for the Panthers, who are going to be bringing the heat against Bradford, so maybe he'll chuck a couple over that line there, and he'll pick up a couple of first downs, move them chains. The only A start on the Panthers side of the ball is their defense. Great matchup against a turnover-happy QB. This has bonus points written all over it. Cam Newton, he's going to get some opportunities to run and make some magic, but he's going to need to throw the ball against these Eagles' 19th pass defense. Let's give Cam a B minus here. He really needs a wide receiver threat. Ted Ginn Jr. is not the answer, but he is unfortunately the leading wide receiver option in Carolina with 18% of the targets. Not too much to show for it. He's had some great flashes, but nothing consistent. The only week he really did well is when we called it in the bargain bin, so helps us out. I'm going to give him a B. I think this is one of those flashes. Tight end Greg Olsen, he's the leading pass catcher with 28% of the targets and his ability to make plays. 7 catches for over 20 yards. That's good news. He can do some damage. B minus for Olsen. He and Ginn are the only ones on the Panthers roster with 10 or more catches.
I think I've got about 60 seconds to blow through Monday Night Football in Baltimore, Arizona before we get to the bargain bin and ultimately the end of the show. So here we go. Joe Flacco is a C. Arizona top 5 versus opposing quarterbacks. They've given up 9 passing touchdowns, but they've also intercepted 11 passes on the season. Could be a rough day for Joe. Justin Forsett, a B. The Cardinals, every bit as good against the run as they are against the pass. Only about 100 yards per game on the ground. Forsett seems to be getting more involved in the passing game, which will help him. Buck Allen, I'm leaving on the bench. Steve Smith, a B+. Fractured back or not, Steve continues to find ways of getting open and producing at a high level, leading some to suggest he might not retire following this season. Following that story for you. Kamar Aiken is a C in this game. Don't expect him as anything more than a desperation flex. Crockett Gilmore, I'm leaving on the bench. Arizona's number 1 against opposing tight ends. To the Cards, we go in Carson Palmer, an A. Nobody gives up more fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks than the Ravens. Over 27 a game in standard scoring leagues. Love Palmer this week. Chris Johnson is a B, probably the best of the Cards bunch in the backfield. The Ravens aren't terrible against the run, but they're not great either. Ellington will see his usage ramp up eventually as the season goes on, but I give him a C in this one, leaving David Johnson on the bench. Receivers, Larry Fitzgerald, probably the best wide receiver start of the week. He's an A. John Brown, an A-, also a super start against these Ravens. Jermaine Gresham is your starting tight end, not messing with him. Brian, we got about a minute and a half to blow through our bargain bin picks. You start with your quarterback.
Easy. Matt Castle, Cowboys. Giant subpar pass defense. Lots of passing in this game. Matt Castle. Lots of check down options to keep those chains moving.
Mine's Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Jets. He's got a stable of healthy receivers at his disposal, coming off of one of his best games as a pro, throwing for 2 touchdowns and running for 1 against a Washington defense that's on par with what he'll see in New England this weekend. You're a running back.
Chris Thompson, Redskins, 3rd down pass catcher with Matt Jones out on that foot injury. He's going to soak up some touches to go with those pass catches.
I'm banking on Shane Vereen. I know I sound like a broken record, and I picked him last week, and he sucked. If you weren't scared off by last week's awful Monday night performance, you may want to give Vereen another look this week against a Dallas defense that has been torched by pass-catching backs in 5 of their last 6 games. Either 50 receiving yards, a score, or both should be expected from Vereen, who did, by the way, find the end zone in the team's Week 1 matchup. Your receiver.
Chris Hogan, Buffalo Bills, with Percy and Watkins out. EJ Manuel is going to throw it to somebody, and you can use him for the next 3 weeks.
Jamison Crowder of Washington, Brian Walters, and Brenton Burson. You ever heard of them?
Nope.
2 speedy, no-name slot guys that have thrived the past 2 games against the Tampa defense. Crowder has already proven himself to be sneaky good PPR flex play, catching 25 of his 27 passes the last 4 games for 244 yards. If he can somehow manage to find the end zone this week, you'll send me a thank you card and maybe a fruit basket. Brian, as always, it's been a lot of fun as we let our listeners gear up now for a victory in Week 7. No matter how you found us, again, iTunes, Stitcher, the Libsyn website, or on 1350 ESPN Radio, We thank you for listening. Brian, anything to add?
Hey, if you miss portions of the radio show, head out and download the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. That way you can always refer back if you need to.
And do review it as well. That helps us out.
Absolutely. Any feedback is good feedback.
Wish you the best of luck this weekend. Thank you again for listening. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall, and this is the 515 Fantasy Football Show.